billionaire's wife was dying in childbirth. 12 world-class doctors had tried everything for 41 hours. Nothing worked. The baby was stuck and time was running out. Then a 52-year-old cleaning lady holding a mop did something that made every doctor in that room freeze. She knocked on the delivery room door and said 5 words that should have gotten her arrested. "I can save your baby." She had no medical degree, no license, just hands that had delivered babies in a village most Americans couldn't find on a map. Tension for 17 years. Marisol had mopped these floors in silence. But her grandmother had taught her secrets that Harvard Medical School never learned. Techniques passed down through 7 generations that could turn a baby without surgery. The billionaire nearly threw her out. His wife was minutes from emergency surgery that could kill her. Leave here now. Why would anyone trust a janitor over 12 Ivy League doctors? This is unacceptable. Wait, give her a chance. What? Why? But Cassandra Whitfield looked into Marisol's eyes and saw something the expensive specialists didn't have. Certainty. "Let her try," Cassandra whispered. Marisol had 5 minutes. If she failed, she'd lose everything. Her job, maybe her freedom. If she succeeded, she'd prove that the woman everyone ignored knew more than the experts everyone trusted. She placed her calloused, cleaning, chemical-worn hands on that billionaire's wife's belly, and what happened in the next 10 minutes would either make her a hero or destroy her completely. The baby's heart rate was dropping. The doctors were preparing the operating room, and Marisol started doing something none of them had ever seen before. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about who deserves to be heard. 3 hours earlier, Marisol was just the custodian, invisible, ignored, holding a mop instead of delivering babies. But she was listening, and what she heard through that delivery room door made her blood run cold. She'd been listening through that door for the past 3 hours. Not because she was nosy, but because something in her bones told her to pay attention. She'd heard the doctors cycling through their protocols, heard the increasingly desperate tone in their voices, heard Cassandra's screams turning from powerful to weak, from determined to defeated. And Marisol knew, with the certainty that came from delivering 14 babies in her village before she was 20 years old, exactly what was wrong. The baby was posterior, face up instead of face down, stuck against the mother's spine in a position that no amount of American medical technology could fix. But that Marisol's grandmother could have corrected in 10 minutes with nothing but skilled hands and ancient knowledge, passed down through 7 generations of midwives. Marisol looked at the door, then at the security guard making his rounds, then at her reflection in the polished hospital floor. She thought about what would happen if she was wrong. She'd lose her job, definitely, probably get deported, might even face criminal charges for practicing medicine without a license. Then she thought about what would happen if she was right and did nothing. Baby would die, maybe the mother too, and Marisol would carry that weight for whatever years she had left. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "When you know how to help Mia, staying silent is the same as doing harm." Marisol set down her mop, smoothed her faded scrubs, and knocked on the delivery room door. "Slash, what would you risk to save 2 lives when the world says you're nobody qualified to try?" Marisol had learned to be invisible long before she crossed the border. It was a survival skill she developed as a child, in a village so poor that sometimes being noticed meant being a target. 2. When you grow up in a place where resources are scarce and desperation runs deep, you learn quickly that the safest way to exist is to take up as little space as possible. To move through the world like smoke, to breathe like a secret. To become so utterly forgettable that powerful people never have to be reminded that you need things they do and want to share. She'd come to New York 17 years ago with nothing but $200 sewn into the lining of her coat and the address of a cousin who promised her a place to sleep. That cousin had moved 2 months before Marisol arrived, leaving no forwarding information. And Marisol had spent her first week in America, sleeping in a church basement, eating donated bread, and wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The job at Manhattan Memorial had been a miracle, or at least that's what the employment agency called it. Night shift custodian, minimum wage, no benefits. But it was legal work with a real paycheck, and after 6 months they'd even helped her get a work permit. Marisol had been grateful, so grateful that she'd never complained about the bathrooms. She scrubbed the vomit she mopped up, the way doctors and nurses looked through her like she was made of glass. But Marisol carried something those doctors didn't have. She carried the knowledge of 7 generations of Salvadoran midwives, women who brought babies into the world with nothing but their hands and their wisdom, and their absolute refusal to let mothers die when there was something they could do about it. Her grandmother, Abuela Luz, had been the village's primary birth attendant for 40 years. She'd delivered over 600 babies, lost only 3, and those losses had haunted her until the day she died. If you're already invested in Marisol's story, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single moment of this incredible journey. Abuela Luz had started teaching Marisol when she was just 8 years old. Not because Marisol had asked, but because Luz had looked at her granddaughter one morning and announced, "You have the hands. I can see it. The knowing is in your fingers." Marisol hadn't understood what that meant until her first birth, when she was 12, and her neighbor went into labor at 2 o'clock in the morning. And there was no time to get to the clinic in the next town Luz had brought. Marisol with her positioned her small hands on the laboring woman's belly and taught her to feel things that couldn't be seen. The position of the baby, the strength of the contractions, the moment when intervention was needed, and the moment when the only thing required was patience. By the time Marisol was 16, she was attending births on her own. By 18, she'd developed a reputation. Women would request her specifically, would walk for hours just so Marisol could be the one to catch their babies. She'd delivered twins in a rainstorm with nothing but a kerosene lamp for light. She'd turned a breech baby with techniques her grandmother had learned from her grandmother, gentle manipulations that convinced the child to flip without surgery. She desaved a mother who was hemorrhaging by using herbs and pressure points that American doctors would have dismissed as superstition. And then the violence had come to her village. The gangs that controlled the region had started recruiting young men, killing the ones who refused. Marisol's nephew had been murdered for saying no. Her brother had disappeared. Her sister-in-law had been threatened. And Marisol had made the hardest choice of her life. She'd left behind everything she knew, everyone she loved, and the sacred calling that had defined her existence, to come to a country where her knowledge meant nothing and her experience counted for less than 0. For 17 years, she'd been a custodian. For 17 years, she'd mopped floors and emptied trash and scrubbed toilets, while doctors who did know half of what she knew about birth walked past her without a glance. She'd made peace with it, or told herself she had. This was the price of safety, of survival, of sending money home so her family could eat. But tonight, standing outside that delivery room door, listening to a woman scream and doctors argue and equipment blare warnings, Marisol felt something crack open inside her chest. The part of her that had been a midwife, a healer, a woman who understood birth the way a musician understands a symphony, that part refused to stay silent anymore. This story is about to take a turn that will leave you breathless. Make sure you're subscribed so you can follow every twist and turn. Hit that subscribe button now. The Whitfield baby had been the talk of the hospital for months. Scripts. Preston Whitfield was one of those tech billionaires whose name appeared in headlines with words like visionary and disruptor and genius. He'd built a social media empire from his dorm room, sold it for $18 billion, and used that money to launch a dozen other companies that were collectively worth more than some small countries. His wife, Cassandra, was a former fashion model turned philanthropist. The kind of woman who appeared in Vogue wearing couture to charity galas. They lived in a penthouse that had been featured in Architectural Digest, vacationed on a private island, and moved through the world with the absolute certainty that money could solve any problem. The pregnancy had been difficult from the start. Cassandra was 43, considered advanced maternal age in obstetric terms. And this was their first biological child after years of fertility treatments. They'd hired the best doctors, followed every protocol, spared no expense. The nursery in their penthouse had been designed by a celebrity interior designer and stocked with organic handcrafted furniture that cost more than Marisol's annual salary. When Cassandra went into labor 2 days ago, Preston had arranged for her to deliver in the hospital's luxury birthing suite, a space that looked more like a 5-star hotel than a medical facility. She'd assembled a dream team of obstetricians, each one a specialist in some aspect of high-risk delivery. Dr. Catherine Ashford from Yale, Dr. James Morrison from Johns Hopkins, Dr. Priya Chatterjee from Columbia, Dr. Robert Fletcher from Stanford. 12 doctors total, each one carrying degrees and credentials and reputations that had taken decades to build. And for 41 hours, those 12 doctors had been losing the battle. Marisol had been cleaning the hallway outside the suite when the first crisis hit around hour 30. She'd heard the sudden rush of voices, the urgent beeping of monitors, the sound of running feet. A nurse had burst through the door, nearly knocking over Marisol's cleaning cart, shouting for an anesthesiologist. Marisol had pressed herself against the wall, invisible as always, and watched the chaos unfold. Over the next 11 hours. She pieced together what was happening through overheard conversations and the increasingly desperate expressions. On the faces of medical staff coming and going, the baby was stuck. Every time Cassandra pushed, the baby's heart rate dropped dangerously low. The doctors had tried everything: position changes, manual manipulation, medications to strengthen contractions, medications to relax the cervix. Nothing worked. Now they were discussing a C-section, but there were complications. Cassandra's blood pressure was dangerously high. She'd already lost more blood than was safe. Her body was so exhausted from the prolonged labor that surgery carried serious risks. The theologist was concerned about her cardiac function. The surgical team was debating whether to use general anesthesia or try to keep her conscious. Marisol had listened to all of this and known with the bone-deep certainty that came from catching hundreds of babies exactly what the problem was. She'd heard it in the description of the baby's position, in the pattern of the heart rate decelerations, in the way the doctors described Cassandra's pain in her back, radiating down her legs. Posterior presentation. The baby was face up, spine against the mother's spine. Trying to navigate through the pelvis at an angle that made descent nearly impossible was a common problem, one that Abuela Luz had taught Marisol to fix when she was 13 years old. You don't fight the baby, Luz had explained. You dance with it. You find the rhythm of the contractions. You feel where the baby's shoulders are, and you guide it. Gentle, gentle, like convincing a flower to open. Force will make things worse. Patience and skilled hands will make things right. The doctors inside that room were operating from textbooks and protocols. They were looking at numbers on screens, measurements from ultrasounds, data from monitors. But they could unfeel what Marisol would have felt if she'd have been allowed to put her hands on Cassandra's belly. Couldn't sense the exact position of the baby's body. Couldn't feel the subtle shifts that indicated when the baby was ready to turn. Couldn't communicate with their hands what their machines were missing. And the baby was running out of time. Marisol knocked on the delivery room door. It was a tentative knock, not the confident rap of someone who belonged there, but the hesitant tap of someone who knew they were crossing a line they were unsupposed to cross. The door opened a crack. A nurse appeared, her face exhausted and stressed.
What?
I'm sorry to bother you, Marisol said in her careful English, the accent she'd never quite been able to smooth out, making her words precise and measured. But I hear the baby is stuck. I might can help. The nurse blinked. You're the custodian. Yes, but in my country I was a midwife. I delivered many babies. Many difficult births. I think I know what is wrong. The nurse's expression shifted from exhausted to annoyed. Ma'am, we have 12 of the best obstetricians in the country in there. If they can't figure it out, I don't think the baby is posterior. Marisol interrupted. She knew. She was being bold. Knew she was risking everything. But the memory of her grandmother's voice was louder than her fear. Face up. Yes, the head is pressing on the mother's spine. This is why she has so much pain in her back. This is why the baby cannot come down. The nurse started to close the door. Thank you for your concern. But I can turn the baby, Marisol said urgently, with my hands from outside. No surgery needed. 10, maybe 15 minutes. I have done this many times. Ma'am, you need to step back and let us do our jobs. The door closed in Marisol's face. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the smooth wood, feeling the weight of her insignificance pressed down on her shoulders. Of course they hadn't listened. Why would they? She was nobody. Custodian, an immigrant with an accent and faded scrubs. Her knowledge didn't come with a diploma from an Ivy League university. Her experience hadn't been validated by the American medical system. She was invisible, and invisible people don't get to save lives. Marisol, picked up her mop and started to walk away. She'd spoken up. That was more than she usually did. She could go back to being invisible now, go back to cleaning floors and staying silent and accepting her place in the world. Then she heard it. Stu. Through the closed door, she heard Cassandra Whitfield scream. Not the productive screams of active labor, but the desperate, terrified screams of a woman who'd been pushed past her limits. And under those screams, she heard Dr. Ashford's voice, tight with controlled panic, were losing fetal heart tones. We need to move to emergency C-section now. Marisol stopped walking. What happens in the next 60 seconds will change everything. If you're not subscribed, you're about to miss the most intense moment of this entire story. Subscribe now. Marisol turned around and knocked on the door again. Harder this time, louder, the kind of knock that demanded attention. The same nurse opened the door, her face now genuinely angry. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to call security if you don't." "Let me try," Marisol said, and her voice was different now. Not hesitant, not apologetic. It was the voice of a woman who delivered 14 babies before she was 20, who saved mothers and children with nothing but her hands and her knowledge and her absolute conviction that she knew what she was doing. 5 minutes. That is all I ask. If I cannot help, then do your surgery. But if I can save this mother from being cut open, if I can save this baby from the risks of surgery, is 5 minutes not worth it? The nurse was about to refuse. Marisol could see it in her face. But then Dr. Ashford appeared behind her. And something in the doctor's expression made Marisol's heart jump. It wasn't anger, it was desperation. "What did she say?" Dr. Ashford asked. "She thinks the baby is posterior and she can turn it manually," the nurse said, her tone making it clear what she thought of that idea. Dr. Ashford looked at Marisol for a long moment. "You're the custodian." "Yes, but in El Salvador, I was a midwife. I delivered many babies, many difficult presentations. Do you have any medical credentials, any formal training?" "I trained with my grandmother for 10 years. She delivered over 600 babies. I delivered more than 100 myself before I came to America." Dr. Ashford's jaw tightened. Marisol could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. On one hand, this was absurd. You don't let a custodian with no American medical credentials touch a patient, especially not a billionaire's wife in the middle of a complicated delivery. On the other hand, they were out of options. The C-section carried serious risks. There was something in this woman's eyes. Something calm and certain and utterly confident. That spoke to a part of Dr. Ashford that still remembered why she'd become a doctor in the first place. "Dr. Ashford," the nurse said, "you can't be seriously considering. How would you do it?" Dr. Ashford interrupted, her eyes still on Marisol. "I put my hands on the mother's belly," Marisol explained. "I feel where the baby's head is, where the shoulders are, between contractions. When the uterus is soft, I apply gentle pressure to guide the baby to rotate. It does not hurt. The mother will feel my hands, but it is not painful. If the baby is ready to turn, it will turn. If not, I will know in 5 minutes and you can do your surgery." "And if something goes wrong?" Dr. Ashford asked. "Nothing will go wrong," Marisol said simply. "I have done this many, many times. I know what I am doing." There was a commotion behind Dr. Ashford. Preston Whitfield appeared, his designer suit rumpled, his face haggard. "What's going on? Why are we standing here talking?" "My wife needs surgery now." Dr. Ashford turned to him. "Mr. Whitfield, this woman believes she can turn your baby without surgery." Preston stared at Marisol like she just appeared out of thin air. "Who is she?" "I'm a custodian here," Marisol said, "but I used to be a midwife." "A custodian?" Preston's voice dripped with disbelief. "You want my wife treated by a custodian when we have 12 of the best doctors in the country here?" "Sir," Dr. Ashford said carefully, "the surgery carries significant risks given your wife's current condition. If there's a chance to avoid it, no," Preston said flatly. "Absolutely not. We're doing the surgery. I don't care about the risks. I want actual doctors treating my wife, not some—" He stopped himself, but everyone knew what word he'd almost said. Marisol felt the familiar weight of invisibility settling back over her shoulders. She'd tried, she'd spoken up, she'd offered her knowledge. And like always, it wasn't enough. The rich man had spoken, and the rich man's word was final. Then another voice cut through the tension. Weak horse, but determined. Let her try. Everyone turned. Cassandra Whitfield was partially visible through the doorway, propped up on pillows, her face pale and drawn, her hair matted with sweat. But her eyes were clear and focused on Marisol. Cassandra, you don't understand. Preston started. I understand that I've been in labor for almost 2 days. Cassandra interrupted. I understand that every intervention these doctors have tried has failed. I understand that surgery right now could kill me. And I understand that this woman looks me in the eye like she actually knows what she is talking about. She focused on Marisol. You really think you can turn my baby? Yes, Marisol said. I am certain. Then do it, Cassandra said. Please, I want to try. This is it, the moment everything changes. Marisol is about to do something that will either make her a hero or destroy her life completely. The delivery room fell silent. Preston looked at his wife, at the doctors, at Marisol, and then back at his wife. For a moment, Marisol thought he would refuse, would use his wealth and power to override even his wife's wishes. Then something shifted in his face. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the first time in his life he'd encountered a problem that his money could immediately solve. 5 minutes, he said finally. You get 5 minutes. If it doesn't work, we go straight to surgery. Dr. Ashford nodded. Agreed. She looked at Marisol. You can try, but I'll be monitoring everything. If I see anything concerning, we stop immediately. Marisol entered the delivery room. It was enormous, more like a luxury hotel suite than a medical space. There was a birthing tub in one corner, a massage chair, mood lighting that could be adjusted for different stages of labor. The medical equipment was state-of-the-art. Machines that could monitor every possible metric of maternal and fetal health. And in the center of all this expensive technology was Cassandra Whitfield, a woman in pain, a mother trying desperately to bring her baby into the world. Marisol approached the bed slowly, her hands already sensing what they would need to do. She could see the shape of Cassandra's belly, could read the position of the baby and the abdomen was carrying. Slightly lopsided, with a hard spot on the left side that indicated where the baby's back was. I am going to put my hands on you now, Marisol said gently in her accented English. I will not hurt you. I am just feeling where your baby is. Cassandra nodded, too exhausted to speak. Marisol placed her hands on Cassandra's belly. Her hands were rough from 17 years of cleaning, calloused and work-worn, nothing like the smooth, gloved hands of the doctors who'd been examining Cassandra. But the moment her palms made contact with Cassandra's skin, something happened. Marisol's grandmother had called it the knowing. That instant connection between midwife and mother, between skilled hands and laboring body, when information flowed both ways and you could sense things that no monitor could measure. She felt the baby immediately, head down, that was good, but rotated wrong, facing forward instead of facing the mother's spine. She felt the shoulders, the curve of the spine, the position of the limbs. She felt the way the baby was wedged against the pelvis, unable to move down because the angle was all wrong. And she felt something else. The baby was tired, but not in distress. The baby was waiting, had been waiting for someone to help, someone to understand. Babies know things. Abuela Luz used to say. They know when the people around them are fighting with their bodies instead of working with them. Sometimes you just have to show the baby the way, Kay Marisol said softly, speaking as much to the baby as to the mother. I understand. We are going to fix this now. A contraction started. Marisol kept her hands still, feeling the wave of tension move through Cassandra's uterus, feeling the baby respond to the pressure. She waited, patient, until the contraction ended and Cassandra's belly went soft again. Then she began. Marisol's hands moved with practiced confidence. She found the baby's shoulder through the abdominal wall, applied gentle, steady pressure upward and to the right, not forcing, not pushing hard, just suggesting, guiding, having a conversation with the baby through touch and pressure, and that mysterious knowing that connected midwife to child. Come on, little one, she murmured in Spanish. Just a little turn, that's all. Just show me you can move. The 12 doctors crowded around, watching with expressions that ranged from skeptical to curious to openly hostile. Dr. Morrison, the Johns Hopkins specialist, was practically vibrating with disapproval. But Dr. Ashford was watching Marisol's hands with intense focus, and Marisol could tell the woman was actually seeing what she was doing. Actually understanding the technique. Another contraction came. Marisol kept her hands steady, maintaining gentle pressure, working with the contraction instead of against it. She felt the baby shift slightly, felt the head rotate a few degrees. Progress, small but real. It's working, Cassandra gasped. I can feel it. The pain in my back, it's less. That's because the baby is moving away from your spine, Marisol explained, keeping her voice calm and reassuring. We are making space. Just breathe through this contraction. Good, very good. The contraction ended. Marisol adjusted her hand position, found a new leverage point. This time, she applied pressure in a slightly different direction, encouraging the baby to continue the rotation. She could feel the baby responding now, could feel the small body turning in the cramped space of the pelvis. 2. The baby's heart rate is improving, one of the nurses monitoring the fetal monitor announced. Coming back up to 140. Fetal position is changing on ultrasound, another voice said. The baby's rotating. Preston Whitfield moved closer, his face a mixture of disbelief and desperate hope. Is it really working? Yes, Marisol said simply. Your baby is turning. Just a little more now. She worked, in silence, her hands reading signals that none of the expensive equipment in the room could detect. She felt the moment when the baby's head slipped past a tight spot in the pelvis. Felt the shoulders realign, felt the entire body shift into the correct position. Face down now, chin tucked, ready to descend. There, Marisol said, pulling her hands back. It is done. The baby is in the right position now. Next contraction. You push and this baby will come. Dr. Ashford quickly did an internal examination. Her eyes went wide. Full dilation. Baby's head is at +2 station. Presentation is now occiput anterior. She looked up at Marisol with something like, "Oh, you did it. You actually did it." Contraction hit. This one was different. Cassandra's body, which had been fighting for 41 hours, suddenly knew exactly what to do. The exhaustion fell away, replaced by a surge of primal power. Push, Dr. Ashford commanded. Push now. Cassandra pushed, and this time the baby descended. Moved down through the birth canal the way babies are supposed to move when everything is aligned correctly. Another push, another foot of progress. The room erupted in controlled excitement. Doctors and nurses positioning themselves, preparing to catch this baby that they'd all thought would need to be surgically removed. I can see the head, Dr. Ashford called out. One more push, Cassandra, one more, and your baby's here. Cassandra screamed and pushed with everything she had left. And then suddenly, impossibly, after 42 hours of labor, after 12 doctors had run out of options, after a billionaire had nearly lost everything that mattered, a baby slid into Dr. Ashford's waiting hands. The cry was immediate, loud, indignant, perfect. It's a boy, Dr. Ashford said, her voice thick with emotion. You have a healthy baby boy. The baby was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, good color, strong cry, D.O. Dr. Ashford placed him on Cassandra's chest, and the room full of people who witnessed the impossible erupted in cheers and tears and relieved laughter. Preston collapsed into a chair, his face in his hands, sobbing. Cassandra was crying too, holding her son, kissing his vernix-covered head, whispering words of love and relief and gratitude. And Marisol stood at the edge of the room, her worn hands at her sides, tears streaming down her face. She'd done it. After 17 years of being invisible, 17 years of cleaning floors while carrying the knowledge of generations, 17 years of silence. She'd finally used her gift again. She'd saved a mother and child. She'd been a midwife again.